Start your engines. Pull those belts down tight one more time, warm up those tires, hit your marks, and let's go racing, boys and girls. NASCAR, Indycar, Formula One, Formula E, and NHRA Racing Talk. This is the Championship Racing Network. Now here's your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson, with producer John Myers.
Well, Meatloaf sang it best. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but here's the thing, really, it's only 1 out of 3, because here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. Producer John is staying with family this weekend. Our prayers go out to them as they await some medical news. Our resident racer, Matt, going to check in with us momentarily, but he will not be on the whole show as he has a personal situation he's dealing with. So it's just me, Steve West, your intrepid show host. But don't worry. I've done this before. I'm a professional. I can handle it. I'm going to bring you all the news and the information. And yeah, I got some commentary, too, on all of the series that we cover. And we got news from all of them. We got news from the Cup Series, Xfinity, Craftsman Truck Series, SRX, NHRA, Indycar, Formula One, and Formula E. And that includes news of something that, well, hadn't been done in 60 years. We're going to get to it all. We're going to quickly visit with Matt right after this, because we're about to drop the green flag right here on this edition of the Championship Racing Network.
For more on the Championship Racing Network.
Maintenance is vital for your vehicle.
The Quaker State 400, Sunday, July 9th at 5 p.m.
NASCAR brought to you locally by the Port Branch Marina, Team 1 Hyundai, and the Tractor Place.
4 tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Yeah, we are. As mentioned, we got everybody kind of in different locations. John is dealing with family. Matt's on location with a personal issue going on. Me, I'm the guy that's in the studio. I'm Steve West. Hope everything is going well with you here. First full weekend in the month of July, really. I mean, you think about the first full racing weekend because usually they're there on Fridays and then doing Saturday and Sunday stuff. So, yeah, I get it. July 1st and 2nd were technically last weekend, but yeah, whatever. Hey, welcome in. Hope everything is going well. Speaking of on location, that would be where one Matt Nicholson is. And Matt, hope everything is going well, and really just wanted to be able to visit with you here real quick and kind of talk about a couple of things here. First of all, let's face it, last weekend was one of those weekends we were dreading. Chicago? What'd you think? Let's see if I actually got him on the air here. Let's try that. All right. Matt, you there? I thought I had Matt. I really did. See, that should be hold. So that should put him on the air. Operator error. John's usually on this side of the board. You know, it's one of those things. We may not get Matt here. So, all right. Well, I'll have to plug along without him. We'll get Matt's thoughts about it next week. Trust me. I wish I knew what to say about Chicago because I'll say this. I'll go this far. A lot of people kind of curious as to what we thought about Chicago. I'm going to try Matt one more time here. All right, Matt, are you there? Matt, can you hear me? Hello, Matt, can you hear me? Good grief.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and start off with that. Let's start off with Chicago here since you've got a limited time. We'll do race recaps coming up here in a minute. What are your thoughts, real quick? Racing was better than what Saturday's racing turned out to be. Saturday's racing was all Cole Custer, spoiler alert. Sunday's racing was actually better than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it was a lot better. I do agree. Saturday, snooze fest was a great time to nap. All right. With Sunday, well, was it bad? No. Was it perfect? No. All right. So, personally, I do think there is room to grow this.
So you think they'll stick with it for another year?
Well, I'm not sure if it's technically going to be in Chicago or somewhere else.
Yeah. Because I'm not so sure that the City Council of Chicago is sold on this, by the way.
I don't think they are either.
No.
So from the simple fact of you come 2 laps short on Saturday of a full race.
Sure. Or even an official race for that matter.
City, or an a full race by official race.
Right.
Is what I meant by that.
Yeah.
You come up short and you have to do an unprecedented circumstance by their definition of how they announced it on Sunday morning when they tried to restart it.
Yeah. And
couldn't get it going. So working with the city, working with the room there, there's room to grow there. Let's say it that way.
Okay.
But as I remember telling you with the eventual Cup winner, I said, there's your sleeper.
Sure. Yeah.
And it proved to be true.
Oh, yeah. You and I were kind of talking about it. We were texting back and forth. And the guy who won, yeah, you called him. And I said, keep an eye out for the other guy. Who was the ringer who walked in with an SHR prepared Rick Ware racing car. And of course, we're talking about the ex-Formula One champion, Jenson Button, who did prove that, yeah, Coda was kind of a fluke. Jenson Button, I think, was thrown off by the amount of beating and banging that took place at Coda, and he really found himself a lot better and a lot more comfortable in the car at Chicago.
Oh, by far, because I think there was somebody, if I'm not mistaken, it was Button, that kind of locked it to Baku.
I can see that.
So I could see his comfortableness there. And then with SVG, he was in another zip code.
Yeah, no kidding. It seemed like anytime he really wanted to just go, it seemed like he was that kid playing with, or that cat playing with a mouse until he finally decided to kill it. He was just following along. He was learning as he was going on, because I mean, this car versus the Australian supercars entry that he runs, there are differences, not the least of which is the fact that he's on the opposite side of the cockpit. But there are some other differences in there. So I think he was taking the time. He was learning as he was going along, and he just stayed within sight of the leaders. And as soon as they said, okay, now's the time to go, he hit the go button. He was gone.
Oh, it was unreal.
So
he was one of the very few cars that made a ton of passes.
Yeah.
Made them and then walked off.
This weekend, we've got kind of an odd situation. Not that we haven't seen this before. Truck Series often goes out on its own. It'll go on a road course by itself, where they're going to be in mid-Ohio, whereas the Xfinity and the Cup Series are going to be in Atlanta, which means that we've got that super speedway rule book coming into effect again. Let's start with the Truck Series. Why do you think that NASCAR did not include the Truck Series at Chicago?
That's a good question. I think because of limited space.
Because they were already bringing IMSA, Xfinity, and Cup?
Yeah, they're already bringing in Xfinity and Cup.
Yeah. And like we said, IMSA was there too.
Yeah, it was where the garage areas had to be staged up there. It was on Lakeshore Drive and I think Columbus Drive, I think.
Yeah.
So it was limited space.
I'll find it interesting to see if they'll actually kind of bring the Truck Series along in the future. If they want to continue this thought of going street course racing, and again, Chicago doesn't appear to be totally sold on this idea, where would you think they might try next? Where, if you were the person in charge of going, hey, I want to go street course racing someplace else, what city are you thinking about?
The first two that immediately come to mind is Detroit and Nashville.
Okay.
Because they've already been permanent street courses established there. They've successfully ran them there.
Sure. Would you think Long Beach, where IndyCar goes to? Or no?
Long Beach could be a suitable replacement for Fontana.
That's true. Could be.
You've got, if you could sell them on it, I think it would be a very good doubleheader for St. Petersburg.
Yeah, but then you're talking about having 4 races in Florida in a fairly short period of time.
Florida. Exactly. That is true.
Because you got the 2 Daytonas, you got Homestead, Miami, and then you want to try and don't get me wrong, I think it would be an attraction to have an IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader on the streets of St. Petersburg, but at the same time, you got to be careful about your scheduling there.
True, it would be. And then Long Beach as well would be a good doubleheader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree. And in that case, you'd have pretty much the Southern California market all to yourself.
Yep, you would have it back, and then that would be a sufficient replacement for Fontana.
I'll say this, and I know that it'll never happen, so this is why I'm saying it. Just in order to tick off the people in the White House, I'd like to do one right on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C.
And, yeah, go right down have start-finish line at 1600.
Sure, just right by them. What the heck? And let's do it early in the morning. Let's wake him up. Oh, I'm sorry. We could do it in the afternoon. We'll just wake him up from his nap. All right, then. Hey, we're hoping and praying nothing but the best. Hopefully everything goes well when it comes to this weekend. And plans are that you're going to be back in studio next weekend?
Yes, I will be back next week.
All right. And we'll get further thoughts on this weekend and some other things that are going on because, I mean, you know this just as well as I do. A lot of big news over the course of this past week, and next week, I'm sure they're going to be even more.
It sure will be.
All right, man. Well, like I said, all the best. Hope everything goes well. We'll talk to you next week, and hopefully next week, all three of us will be back in studio.
All right, brother.
All right. Talk to you soon. Matt, on location, dealing with some personal stuff, and like I said, hoping nothing but the best for him. Let's go ahead and start the recap situation here before we wrap up segment number one. And, you know, a lot of this stuff you guys already know, but for those of you that might have missed a race or two here or there, spoiler alert, we'll start off with the Xfinity Series. Race was suspended last Saturday right before the halfway point. Initially stopped due to lightning reported within an 8-mile radius of the track, and then radar showing they said no break in the weather until it was going to be way too late. They were supposed to pick it back up on Sunday after the Formula One race would have actually not only started but ended. It didn't. So since all the action was Saturday, we're still going to lead off with it. And what could really have been a massive nightmare for NASCAR when it comes to street course racing, and it kind of came true really in the Xfinity Series. Cole Custer claims the pole, and they're on kind of a flying start sort of thing. He claims the lead. He won the first stage. He led all 25 laps that were run before the action got halted due to weather concerns, with the storms persisting early on Sunday and likely pressure from the city about not tying up those normally busy streets. Again, look at a map of where the race course was and then kind of overlay that or expand it out if you can and start looking at Chicago. They ran on some really busy streets, and that means they had to shut all those streets down. So they called the race. Custer, despite being shy of the stage 2 mark by 5 laps and shy of the halfway mark by a couple of laps, gets the unusual win. NASCAR did explain their decision to call the race before technically it could be called official. They cited section 1.6.b of their rule book. It states that circumstances, quote unquote, that are either unforeseen or are otherwise extraordinary allows NASCAR, as a practical matter, to make a determination regarding the conduct of the event. And they went on to further explain that with standing water and flooding, a significant issue at the racetrack and throughout the city, especially overnight into Sunday morning when they were going to try and get the race back going, they said that there was no real option to return to racing prior to shifting to the Cup Series race operations. So our relationship with the city of Chicago has been strong. I'll get back to that. And among the most valuable assets in reaching this historic weekend, in the spirit of that partnership, returning on Monday for the completion of a NASCAR Xfinity event 2 laps short of halfway was an option we chose not to employ. Now, I say, you know, they had a good relationship with the city of Chicago. They had a good enough relationship with the city of Chicago to where the city council worked with them on a 1-year deal. And reports started coming out the week before the race actually happened, and had the situation where they weren't sold on this. None of the city council were really sold on it. And the council person or alderman or whatever it is that they call that person that's over the section of the city of Chicago where the race actually happened, they were getting numerous, and I mean a bunch, of complaints about how the detours came about because of the roads being shut down for this particular event. And of course, then you also had to shut down roadways to a certain extent to get the haulers, all those 18-wheelers for NASCAR, both Cup and Xfinity, for IMSA, for all of the Cup Series teams, for all of the Xfinity Series teams, and for all the IMSA teams to be able to bring those haulers in so that they could unload. That disrupted things. And if you've ever tried or even seen traffic in downtown Chicago, you know this was a flippin' nightmare. Now, again, the Cup Series race came off better than what we probably had really expected, but the Xfinity Series was pretty much exactly what we thought it was going to be. It became follow the leader. Now, Cole Custer seemed to have things down. It may have been that way even if things had been dry, because Cole Custer seemed to take, I'll use the expression because it seems to be the obvious one, he took to the Chicago street course like a duck to water. He did a fantastic job. There's no doubt about it. As to whether or not somebody else might have been able to do something had things been a little bit more even, in other words, drier conditions, I don't know. I can't tell you that. I can't go back in time and change the weather and figure that out. But with all of the complaints that have been coming in to the city council, all of the things that Chicago and NASCAR had to do in order to put this race on, and the fact that this didn't make a profit, not by any stretch of the imagination, not for the city of Chicago and not for NASCAR. I don't know whether this happens for a second year in a row. And on top of that, NASCAR has said, come 2024, just next year, remember, we don't have the schedule out. We got one for Formula One. We talked about the one for Formula E last week. We'll talk about the F1 schedule later. They want to play with the schedule a lot. They want to mess with the schedule a lot. There's no guarantee that we're going to return to Chicago for a street course race. There's no guarantee we're going to get a street course race next year. We're even hearing that there's no guarantee that we're going to return to Bristol on dirt. They're going to play with the schedule that much from 2023 to 2024. We'll find out. Either way, Custer claims the second win of the year, marks his 12th Xfinity Series win of his career. He's gotten hot lately, claiming his 10th straight top 10 finish as well. John Hunter Nemechek was second, trailed by Justin Allgaier, Brett Moffitt, Austin Hill, Sammy Smith, Daniel Hemrick, Chandler Smith, Parker Kligerman, and Kaz Gralla. For those of you that are watching on CRN Live on YouTube, I keep looking in different places because there's the camera, there's my basic rundown of things, and of course I got to look over here at the computer to see what I'm doing. So, I'm playing producer and host at the same time. The new seeding order for the playoffs looks like this. Austin Hill, 3 wins. He's your 1 seed. Then tied at 2 wins each in seed order, it's Cole Custer and John Hunter Nemechek. Single-time winners, Justin Allgaier, Chandler, then Sammy Smith, and Jeb Burton. The drivers who were in on points, Josh Berry, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Daniel Hemrick, and Riley Herbst. He's the guy on the bubble. Herbst is sitting 26 points to the good, while Parker Kligerman, despite his top 10 in Chicago, whereas Riley Herbst didn't have a great day. He sits on the outside looking in. We'll do the rest of the weekend recap from last weekend.
and online, hooliganshd.com, where everyone bangs the gong.
2 tires only, and back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back into the show. The one and only guy here in the studio. I'm Steve West. Hope everything's going well this morning. John and Matt will be back with me next weekend here on the show. We're in the recap here as we were joined by Matt. If you're joining us late, where you been? But Matt joined us by phone just a couple of moments ago, but he could not stick with us. So again, we'll check in with him and producer John next week. And in the meantime, let's see what else we can get ourselves into here on this edition of CRN, where we're, like I said, in the middle of recaps, where last Sunday morning Formula One got going in the Austrian Grand Prix. I know you're all shocked by the fact that Max Verstappen won the pole, right? Sure you are. He also led the most laps, and then he claimed the win. Okay, yeah. No real drama there. It's 5 in a row for him. All but 2 of the races so far this year have been won by Max Verstappen, and all of the races this year have been won by Red Bull. Ferrari did get a nice outing from Charles Leclerc. He claimed second, and then the other Red Bull, Sergio Perez, claimed third. Rest of your top 10, Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton. Not a great day for him. Lance Stroll and Pierre Gasly. Yet another win for Verstappen, and the championship run all but over. 229 to 148 for Verstappen over his own teammate, Sergio Perez. Then you got Fernando Alonso with 131. Lewis Hamilton has 106, 82 for Carlos Sainz. Rest of your top 10 in points. Points don't matter at this point in time because they're not really even players. Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Lance Stroll, Esteban Ocon, Lando Norris. 2023 Constructors' Cup winning team in waiting, or champion in waiting, if you will, Red Bull, 377 points. Compare that to Mercedes' total, 178. We're not even halfway through the Formula One season, and they have a 199-point lead. For all intents and purposes, it's a 200-point lead. 175 for Aston Martin. So, yeah, second, third, fourth even. Ferrari has 154. Those are all kind of up for grabs right now. Alpine's kind of all by itself in fifth with 47. Remember, this includes points from Saturday's sprint race as well. So next up, McLaren has 29. Haas F1 is up to seventh. They've got 11 now, jumping over Alfa Romeo's 9. 7 for Williams. AlphaTauri has 2 points. It's a mirror opposite of their sister company, Red Bull. We'll talk more about AlphaTauri coming up here a little bit later on in the show, too, because things are changing over there. Then it was, like I said, it was supposed to be the Xfinity Series. We already covered that it got called. So we go to Indycar running where the Craftsman Truck Series is running today. Spoiler alert. They ran at Mid-Ohio after a very scary practice crash. If you didn't get the chance to see this, thank the good Lord above, Sebastian Bourdais, even though not cleared by doctors, was able to be pulled from his ride and walked away from this situation. But like I said, Sebastian Bourdais, after being checked out, was not cleared by doctors, so they pulled him from his ride, but they kept the entry there, and they were able to get Connor Daly in time, so he filled in and raced that car in Sebastian Bourdais' place. All of that didn't matter to Alex Palou. Alex Palou is becoming IndyCar's version of Max Verstappen. He just claimed his third win in a row. First time in IndyCar for a driver to win 3 in a row since 2016 when Scott Dixon pulled the three-peat. He's won 4 of the last 5. The only race he missed out on was the Indy 500. Palou led the most laps as well, 48 of the 80, easily besting second-place Dixon by over 5 seconds at the finish line. Will Power third, trailed by Christian Lundgaard, Scott McLaughlin, David Malukas. We'll get back to him. Graham Rahal, Pato Award, and rookie Marcus Armstrong claiming 9th with Alexander Rossi in 10th. Palou is now out to a pretty commanding lead over Scott Dixon. 110 points the difference, 377 to 267. Second place still up for grabs, 261 for Joseph Newgarden, so he's only 6 back. Marcus Ericsson not that far back at 255, and Pato Award 5th at 250. Scott McLaughlin sits 6th in points, trailed by Will Power, Alexander Rossi, Colton Herta, Christian Lundgaard, and in the rookie points, Marcus Armstrong has begun to pull away in the battle for Rookie of the Year. He's got 130 points to 95 for Augustin Canapino. Benjamin Peterson in there with 75. Stingray Robb, he hands down gets the best name in IndyCar, but Rookie of the Year looking less and less likely. He's got 71. That's when we head back to Chicago. Cup Series debut on the streets of Chicago, a first for the Cup Series and running a street course, meaning it was kind of up for grabs as to who might win it. In qualifying, you had 2 ringers that qualified well, ex-F1 champion Jenson Button starting inside the top 10. Starting inside the top 5, however, the Cup debut for the Australian Supercars competitor Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, thing about it is, while his position would change throughout the race, he really was never much outside of the top 10. When NASCAR decided after a short weather delay caused the race to start late and fears of darkness caused the series to shorten the event from 100, that was the planned, down to 75 laps. By the way, when that was announced, I'm glad I wasn't the PA announcer for that particular one, because that was a very unpopular move, and you could hear the fans all around the track booing that, and you could hear it on television. I wasn't listening on the radio, but I get the funny feeling you probably could have heard it on the MRN coverage as well. Either way, what that did was it then put a good number of cars which had pitted on lap 43 able to finish the race without needing another pit stop. Van Gisbergen's final pit stop actually came on lap 47. It put him back out in 18th, but man, that kid had a rocket ship, and he might have been the most comfortable driver on the street course. He just blasted through that field on lap 71, got by Justin Haley for the lead. He goes on to claim the win and does something that hasn't been done literally in 60 years. The last time a driver won in what would be their Cup Series debut, remember the Cup Series in and of itself really didn't start, or the modern era, until Winston came in as the primary sponsor back in the early 1970s, 1972. But 1963 was the last time that a driver came in and won their first ever top-level NASCAR race. We'll deal with more details on that coming up in a bit, too. Justin Haley finished second, Chase Elliott third, then Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, who I'm kind of wondering about that because he slammed his car into a tire barrier earlier in the race and had to be towed out, but nice recovery for him. Austin Cindric, Michael McDowell, Joey Logano, Ty Gibbs, Chris Buescher completed the top 10 as the street lights came on when the checkered flag was shown. Drivers locked into the playoffs does not change because, as we mentioned, this is the debut for Shane Van Gisbergen, so he's not eligible for the playoffs despite the win. William Byron, Kyle Busch, 3 wins each, 2 wins for Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Larson, your single-time winners who are locked in. Seed order: Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. As for the slimming down number of drivers who are in on points, Kevin Harvick still leads that particular run. Then you got, I lost my place. Excuse me. Then you got Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski, Bubba Wallace, and Ty Gibbs sitting on the bubble. And I say this one's definitely on the bubble because Ty Gibbs is only 6 points up on Daniel Suarez. He's only 10 points over Michael McDowell. So things really, really can change here. So there you go. As for this weekend's racing, begins later today as we are live. Craftsman Truck Series getting in the O'Reilly Auto Parts 150 at Mid-Ohio. That's on the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, the very same one Indycar ran last weekend. 13 turns over 2.258 miles. It'll be heard live on MRN Radio, seen on Fox Sports 1, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Central Time. For those of you that are new or need a reminder, that does not include pre-race. Because you noted I put there on Fox Sports 1, that's your television, MRN Radio, that's your radio coverage. And pre-race shows on radio and on television start at different times. So I'm going actual race coverage time when I say that. And that's, again, for the benefit of the new listeners and for those who kind of need a reminder. Saturday night racing comes to nearby Atlanta Motor Speedway, weather permitting, as the Xfinity Series will get going with the Alsco Uniforms 250. That'll be on the USA cable network and PRN radio, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central Time. Sunday morning here in the United States of America, Formula One going to get the Aramco British Grand Prix rolling on the 18-turn, 3.66-mile long road course called Silverstone, if you're British. It'll air on ESPN2. Yeah, the Deuce gets this one starting just before 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. And final race of the series that we cover for this weekend, hint, Cup Series. They're at Atlanta Motor Speedway for the Quaker State 400, available at Walmart. These are the names that I'm told. Airs on USA again. NPRN Radio begins 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time. So again, we're going to get one of those races that's going to kind of start in the evening and work into kind of nighttime. The lights will come on over in Atlanta before all is said and done. So we'll have to see how the ratings go there. But then again, this is Atlanta and it's July. I don't think I need to say much more other than the fact that Atlanta gets a nickname of Hotlanta for a reason. Formula E, Indycar, and the NHRA are all off this weekend, but we are not done because before we go to air again next Saturday, we'll see the beginning of the SRX racing season. That's right. We are up against the beginning of the Superstar Racing Experience season. 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central Time, Thursday evening, ESPN bringing back Thursday Night Thunder. SRX Series kicking off Season 3 at the same place they kicked off their inaugural season. Stafford Speedway, the short track up in Connecticut. Going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait for that. Looking forward, really, to the SRX Series back. All right, we got some time here before this, so let's talk about the historical aspect of what Shane Van Gisbergen did in Chicago last weekend, and noted in the recap that he is an Australian supercars competitor by trade. He's actually very, very good at it. He made his way to the United States, got invited by Trackhouse Racing to run their Project 91. Again, qualified inside the top 5. Not only did he qualify well, he really was, for the most part, inside the top 10 all day. The New Zealand native parked it in victory lane, claiming a win in his Cup Series debut. And again, that wasn't anything that we had thought of since 1963. Last driver to claim a win in their very first outing in what we now call the Cup Series. Did it before we called it the Cup Series. Johnny Rutherford was the last driver to do it. Van Gisbergen actually joins a very elite club in this. He's one of only 7 to win in their debut. Before Rutherford, it was Marvin Burke who did it in 1951. We saw driver Leon Sales. These are names that you guys are going to have to look up because I've done no research on the history of Marvin Burke or Leon Sales in 1950. Actually, he was one of 2 drivers to do it that year because Harold Kite pulled that trick that same year. You go back another year, 1949, Jack White was able to win in his Cup Series debut. The very first driver to do it was Jim Roper, of course, who won the very first ever race in what we would now call NASCAR's Cup Series. Claimed the win at Charlotte. We've talked about him being credited with the first ever NASCAR sanctioned race. So yeah, very, very elite company, very small group that Shane Van Gisbergen is in. And last week, before he claimed the win in Chicago, he actually told media that he was enjoying being behind the wheel of a Cup Series car so much that he would actually like to take a turn at an oval track. At this time, there isn't that opportunity, but you never know. Something might happen before the year is out. Talking to media after the win Sunday evening, he was asked about his future plans and if they included coming to the United States. Who knows, maybe trying out Cup Series on a full-time basis. He replied, quote, "I miss racing in the States. I've done Daytona 4 or 5 times," talking about the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. "And just the way the American people are and the way they race, it's so much more enjoyable." Kind of throwing the Australian Supercars series under the bus there. Anyway, this is his way of looking at things, and there you go. He went on to say, quote, "It's so much more enjoyable even doing the media stuff, which I hate. Everyone here is so nice. They ask good questions. They're respectful, and it goes both ways. It's so enjoyable. The races are run, the way that the races are run. I'm committed next year to supercars. I still love supercars, but in 2025, who knows?" Hang on a moment. As for the car itself, what do we know is next for the Project 91 ride? That was asked in the post-race press conference of Trackhouse Racing owner Justin Marks. He said this, quote, "We don't have any other Project 91 races on the calendar right now. This is it. Like I said, beyond probably 3 races, it starts to become a third team, starts to become something of a drain. Not a drain, but it does take some of the resources away from our full-time number 1 and number 99 cars. That's what we're really focused on at Trackhouse, getting both of those cars in to compete for the championship, being able to make a championship run. The last thing I want to do is have Project 91 be a drain on that or take anything away from that. So I think 3 is really sort of the limit for us." But he continued, "I'm pretty confident that it is Shane Van Gisbergen's seat right now. He did such an incredible job. Winning feels pretty good. Shane just did it. So if he can continue to deliver that, I think the door's open for him to do more. Sure. However, could a move to NASCAR actually happen quicker?" And there's a reason why we specifically mentioned that. Because the team that he runs for in Australian supercars is called 888 Racing. Jamie Whincup, who is well known to those who follow the Australian Supercars Series, all of this happened, and he confirmed that, yes, Van Gisbergen, SVG, whatever you want to call him, has a deal through 2024, but said that should a NASCAR ride come to fruition, for an offer should come his way, and he wants to take it, 888 Racing's not going to hold SVG to the 2024 part of his contract. So I guess we'll find out. Time will tell as to whether or not SVG will come racing. Again, street course racing is one thing. Road course racing, he could probably handle. The oval track situation is something else entirely different. I mean, we've talked about this. I don't even know how many times, how many Formula One drivers have come over and said, you know what, I wouldn't mind trying IndyCar, but I don't want to do the ovals. Well, guess what NASCAR's full of? To SVG's credit, he wants to do an oval, so I think that helps. But how will he perform on it is the big question. We'll talk a little bit more about this because we'll talk Jenson Button and Max Verstappen when it comes to this next.
Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Yes, we are, with the one guy that's in studio. The other two, producer John Myers and, of course, Matt, they are on location, and they'll be back next weekend. You just got to put up with me for a week. I appreciate you doing it. I am Steve West, and we were talking about SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen. First time in 60 years that a driver walks in and in his very first ever Cup Series race claims a win, so congratulations to him. He and former F1 driver Jenson Button in the race. And because of those two guys, not just those two guys, but because of the fact that this was the first time that NASCAR's Cup Series ran on a street course. This had the attention of racers all around the world, including two-time defending Formula One champion Max Verstappen. Verstappen arrived in Britain on Thursday and caught up with the media because that is media day. They meet with the media the day they arrive there, and he got to talking about the NASCAR side of things, said he stayed up late specifically to be able to catch the Chicago race, said, quote, "And I've never felt so nervous in my life watching someone else race and trying to win it." So, yeah, I was literally screaming in front of my monitor, television, for him to win that. He was one of many racers worldwide that Van Gisbergen admitted have been blowing up his phone all week long. And truth be told, I'm not surprised by that in any way, shape, or form. You get something like that, something that is relatively historic. And we've said this before. The rivalry side of things, and for the longest time, just kind of keeping it U.S.-centric. Sorry, Athena, I know you're overseas. But I'll bring this all in to a worldwide side coming up here in a moment. For the longest time, NASCAR and IndyCar barely even noted each other's existence. And it's strange because for the longest time, we were getting a situation where Cup Series drivers, and you go back in history, you'll see a lot of drivers, Hall of Fame drivers, that were going from their stock cars and they were going and they were racing IndyCar. Cale Yarborough did it. Bobby Allison did it a long time ago, long before we ever talked about the double. But the funny thing is that the series directors of IndyCar and NASCAR really didn't try to work together in any way, shape, or form. And when the Brickyard 400 came about in 1994, that was an amazing olive branch by the leaders of IndyCar at the time because, again, they still really didn't think that much of it. And there were a lot of IndyCar drivers and Formula One drivers and other kind of drivers who basically looked at NASCAR like racing taxi cabs. I'm quoting somebody. I can't remember the name of the person, and it really doesn't matter at this point in time. Formula One has long kept anything other than the Formula One ladder at arm's length. It's not like they're trying to ignore them. It's just that they kind of keep everybody else at a distance. And IndyCar and Formula One don't work together all that well. Now, with IndyCar's new ownership, Penske Entertainment, Roger Penske, who has race teams in both IndyCar and NASCAR, among many others, that relationship has gotten a lot closer. They're much more willing to work together. That's why when we were talking to Matt about 30 minutes ago, and we got to talking about should NASCAR go street course racing again and it not take fruition in Chicago, and one of our viewers on CRN Live on YouTube, which, by the way, you can go to and subscribe to if you haven't already. It's free. If you have already subscribed, please tell a friend about it. But Jeffrey noted that there is a 3-year contract between NASCAR and Chicago, but there is a 3-month period from the end of last weekend's race, 180 days for all intents and purposes, which is really more than 3 months now that I think about it. It's a 6-month period, to where either side can look at the other. Chicago could look at NASCAR and say, nope, we're out. NASCAR could look at Chicago and say, nope, we're out. So we'll find out. But that's plenty of time because they're probably going to try and get the 2024 schedule out September at the latest, I would think. Probably August seems more likely. So within the next 6 to 8 weeks, I would expect NASCAR to start releasing the schedules for Cup, Xfinity, and Trucks. Will Chicago be there? We don't know. But if they're going to take it someplace else, where do they take it? And it would be very, very cool to see another IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader like we're going to see in give or take a month from now when they go to Indianapolis on the road course. You'll see IndyCar run it first, then NASCAR's Xfinity Series. That'll be Saturday. And then Sunday will be the Cup Series, generally. Sometimes maybe that'll change. I would love to see an IndyCar Cup Series doubleheader on Sunday. I don't know if they're going to do that. I doubt it, kind of, just to be real honest. But I'd love to see it. Could we do that at a Detroit or a Long Beach? I think St. Petersburg is probably the least likely of the street courses to get one. I think it would probably happen at Long Beach before it would happen even at Detroit, and I think Detroit would be in line before St. Petersburg. But that's my personal opinion. What do I know? I'm just a layman here in Alabama. But just based upon geography and what we know the history of NASCAR as saying these are areas we like to be in, Long Beach probably would seem to be the appropriate place for them to go because they seem enamored of the idea of having a race in Southern California. And we haven't got one clue as to the future of Auto Club Speedway. So there you have it. Then we go to Rick Ware Racing. Rick Ware Racing was who Jenson Button drove for last weekend, but he was in the 15 car. That was always, I think, probably planned, was to put something of a Jenson Button's talent in a Rick Ware Racing car, in a car prepared by Stewart-Haas Racing. That's why the Mobile One was on the side. That's a Stewart-Haas Racing primary sponsor. That's why Mobile One was on the hood of the 15 car that Jenson Button was running last week. I get the funny feeling they're about to get another car here that is going to be prepared by Stewart-Haas Racing, and this time for 3 races because Rick Ware Racing, as they continue to go through several drivers filling out their season, latest on the 51 car is that they're going to bring Cole Custer back up into the Cup Series to run 3 races before the season is done. The first of those is this weekend. Custer, of course, drove in Cup Series for Stewart-Haas Racing in the 41 car from 2020 through 2022. He did claim 1 win, but that was in his rookie year, and things just didn't seem to work for him in the rest of his rookie year and kind of slid off even further as we got 2021 into 2022. So they put him back into the Xfinity Series to rebuild his confidence. He seems to have gotten his feet back under him again. We just noted it. Through the first 16 races of this year, he's got 2 wins and 10 straight top 10s. And he's driven for Rick Ware Racing before, an Xfinity start in 2021 and 3 Cup Series starts going back to 2018. Again, while not confirmed, I would expect this car, and this time around, again, it's the 51 car. I would expect it to be prepared by Stewart-Haas Racing. That way they're going to give him the best chance that they possibly can at a place like an Atlanta. I don't know where the other 2 are going to be. Atlanta-based company Relay Payments is joined up with Hendrick Motorsports this week. They're going to be an associate sponsor of the 24 of William Byron this weekend in Atlanta and for the remainder of the year. But there are going to be 2 races where they're going to be the primary sponsor. For an Atlanta-based company, they chose to be primary at Bristol and Las Vegas, which are both playoff races. I understand that. A lot of eyes will be slapped on the races there. Relay, again, an Atlanta-based tech company working to modernize and streamline payments for the transportation, logistics, and supply chain industries. In other words, they want to make it easier on truck drivers to be able to not have to do as much paperwork and concentrate on the driving in and of itself. I don't know why they're not primary at Atlanta, their home base, but yeah, doesn't really matter. And there are, once again, new pit road rules for Atlanta. We detailed this back in the spring, when they extended pit road all the way back over to the entrance to turn 3. And that wasn't the problem that Matt and I had. The problem that Matt and I had at the time was the fact that you had to get down to pit road speed as you entered turn 3. Now remember, Atlanta is now considered a super speedway on the same level as a Talladega or a Daytona. So you got the exact same rules package. So you have to slow down from those speeds to 45. And if they needed to do a green flag pit stop in the spring race at Atlanta, they had to drop down from basically 190 miles an hour to 45. Think about that for a moment. And you had to do that from the entrance of turn 3 all the way around turn 4, down pit road to your pit stall, back out on pit road, all the way to the exit of pit road before you could start getting back up to speed. Anybody notice the problem there? NASCAR finally did, because I'm sure we weren't the only drivers that were complaining about this, or the only people that were complaining about this. I'm sure the drivers started complaining very, very loudly, so they've changed them again. The entrance to pit road is still going to be going into turn 3, but now they're going to use 2 different speed limits under green flag conditions. Sections 1 and 2 of pit road, again, under green, and this is basically from the entrance of pit road, turn 3, all the way around to what the old traditional entrance of pit road was. So sections 1 and 2 of pit road, again, under green, will now have their speed limit set at 90. Sections 3 through 18 then drops down to 45. That's when you're actually on the traditional pit road where the workers could be actually out there, pit crews and so on and so forth. So for sections 1 through 3, that's up from that springtime limit, as we mentioned, of 45. Under caution, all the sections are going to be at 45. But then again, you're driving behind a pace car. That's no big deal. This will help out some. Is it going to be the end-all, be-all solution? No, but it's the right step in the right direction anyway. I'm going to go back to this thing in because, again, this thing in Chicago, it was a curiosity. For a lot of people, they actually liked it. I even saw some people on social media say that this was much better than the race at North Wilkesboro. And competitive-wise, I can see where they're coming from because Kyle Larson dominated the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. But North Wilkesboro is one of those situations where, again, not one single driver had ever been on that course. But Kyle Larson, being the guy that he is and very familiar with dirt track racing and being loose, he was able to adjust to the situation at North Wilkesboro much better and much faster than anybody else, and that's why he dominated the event. If SVG had wanted to, I think he could have taken control of this race and he could have walked away with it, and we would have been talking about the Chicago Street Course race being as boring as North Wilkesboro, maybe even more so. Because as we talked about it during the recap and with Matt about 30 minutes ago, maybe even a little bit longer now, he looked like a cat playing with a mouse before he killed it. Anytime he wanted to, he could have pushed that go button. He'd been gone. Because he took control of that race on lap 71 of 75 by passing Justin Haley. And by the time all was said and done, he was leaving Justin Haley way back in the background to the point where Justin Haley was going to need binoculars. If SVG had hit that go button earlier, it would have needed a telescope or worse, a drone. Again, hard to look around all those walls. He could have won that race by a Formula One margin of 25, 30 seconds easily if SVG had wanted to. But being the curiosity that it was, a whole lot of people wanted to check it out, and that was good for NASCAR, and it was good for the network that aired it, NBC. They reported that some 4.795 million people watched the inaugural street course race last weekend on television. That's the biggest number for NBC in NASCAR since the 2017 Brickyard 400. That was back when they got 5.4 million people watching. It's the second biggest viewership number of 2023 to date, behind only the Daytona 500. For the Fox network, that drew in almost 8.2 million people. The race is expected to be the highest rated show on TV on Sunday evening in network prime time. I know that those numbers are out there somewhere. I just didn't take the time to look them up. But in the fact that we are dealing with repeat season here in the USA, what are they going up against? They went up against the probably one non-repeat, the news magazine 60 Minutes on CBS. And last I checked, which was a couple of the weekend before, when NASCAR went up against 60 Minutes on the first race that NBC picked up, they effectively tied. And the venerable news magazine of 60 Minutes claimed just under 3 million viewers. Well, if they got another 3 million viewers, they got trounced. 4.795 million viewers for NASCAR. So yeah, I'd say it was the number one TV opportunity last weekend. So congratulations. Here's the thing. They go to Atlanta. It's going to be primetime. It's going to be on USA. So the numbers are going to be vastly different. And one more note here before we go to top of the hour here. If you were thinking about going to the 2024 Daytona 500, you have been forewarned. Tickets are now on sale. 66th running of the Great American Race going to take place February the 18th of 2024. And Daytona, I get this. A lot of these places that are selling tickets, or just watch any infomercial. And they're going to say, this is only available for a limited time. Some infomercials, I know John knows this as well because we've been in television. John is in television behind the scenes. We've seen these. You've seen these as well. If you can stomach watching an infomercial for any particular length of time, you'll notice a lot of them put a clock up there and state you've got 15 minutes from this point in time to call in and place your order for this. Here's the thing. If you called that number 2 days after you had seen the show, bet you'd still get the deal. But tickets to the Daytona 500, on the other hand, they are a limited commodity. And Daytona does encourage you to get your tickets quickly in order to have your better choice of seating because the race has been a sellout the past several seasons, and they're selling out faster and faster each and every year. There are single-day packages all the way up to 4-day packages to where you can see the duels all the way through the Daytona 500. So if you want to go to the Daytona 500, you can get your tickets right now. Say happy birthday to somebody. Hour 2's next.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Four tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in. Hour number 2 on the air. And if you just now joined us, you missed all of hour 1. What the heck you been doing, man? But you also missed the fact that producer John is at home. He's got family situation that he's currently playing kind of nursemaid to, and I understand it. It happens. Family comes first when it comes to this show. So all of our best to producer John, who is actually putting the show up on CRN Live on YouTube via remote. So it looks a little different from what you're used to when it comes to CRN Live on YouTube. But hey, he's doing the very best that he can, and I appreciate it. And Matt's dealing with a personal situation, so he's not in studio. But everybody planning on being back in studio again next weekend. I'm Steve West, and here I sit trying to do everything except for putting us on YouTube. Again, thank you, Producer John, for that. So I'm playing on-air producer and the host at the same time. So if it sounds a little weird, that's the way it goes. Either way, we've changed from the Cup Series to the Xfinity Series, where last Saturday night, after the race had been postponed, some idiot. I wish I had a picture of this car that I could show you, because here's the thing. Regardless of what you think, whether you think it's one of the best looking cars out there or ugly as sin, you can take a car that looks beautiful and make it ugly. Or you can take an ugly car and make it that much uglier. Whatever you think of the new mid-engine Corvette, this guy, an otherwise unidentified 46-year-old moron, decided he wanted to check out the Chicago street course circuit. He didn't jump over a wall and start walking around it. Nope. This moron, again, otherwise unidentified as a 46-year-old man, jumped in his bright yellow with flames painted on it, mid-engine Corvette, somehow got around some barriers and, well, took a spin on the street course at about 9 p.m. Police were able to block the car in. Officers were caught on camera talking to not just one, but two men before the car with a police escort was seen driving off the course at about 9:30 p.m. The charges were not revealed by Chicago media. Again, the man was not identified. I would imagine, though, that some fairly serious fines came his way. And yeah, go try to find the car. Whatever he's done to the paint scheme on this yellow car with the flame job, it ain't pretty. Dale Earnhardt Jr. taking a somewhat unprecedented step this year. Ever since he retired from full-time Cup Series racing, he has raced in one Xfinity Series race each and every year for his own junior motorsports. Generally, it's been on some of the shorter tracks. He's been at Homestead, Miami. He's been at Darlington, but generally it's like a Richmond or a Bristol or someplace like that. Speaking of Bristol, he's slated to run Bristol September the 15th already. He's decided to add a second race to his 2023 slate, and he's going to race October 21st at Homestead Miami Speedway. He raced there, as I mentioned, in Xfinity competition. Back in 2020, he finished fifth there. He's breaking out the 88 car for this race. He'll have Bass Pro Shops Club Card sponsorship for Homestead Miami, whereas he will have the old Unilever Hellman's Mayo sponsorship at Bristol. So, hey, knock it out, man. Seen this, had the chance to see this before, because one of the races that he did was one of the races that Matt and I were lucky enough to be at Darlington for. And he announced he was going to race the Xfinity Series at Darlington in the second year that we were there, 2019, if I'm remembering my timeline correct. And we've all seen this before. If you watch any Xfinity Series race on television, you get varying numbers of people that are in the stands, but generally it's far from a sellout. When Dale Jr. shows up and he's racing a NASCAR Xfinity Series race, a lot more tickets get sold. So yeah, Homestead, Miami, and Bristol, believe me, they're very happy that he's going to be racing at both of those tracks later on this year. Mason Massey going to be driving this weekend. He's going to be behind the wheel of the 08 Chevrolet Camaro for SS Greenlight Racing. While his name is going to be at the top of the windshield, it's not going to be the name that's going to be over the door. That name is Bo Slocum. That may not mean much to a whole lot of you, but some of you, maybe Chi-Town Mark, are going, yep, I know who he's talking about. Slocum made his name at Quarter Mile Oval Atlanta Motor Speedway in the 1990s and into the early 2000s, and then worked his way to run in what is now called the ARCA Menard Series. And while chasing his own dreams, Slocum was known to pay it forward as well. He mentored and he coached young Bandolero and legend car drivers. In all, Slocum claimed 131 feature wins, but here's the problem. 2009, he got diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. He fought valiantly for 2 years, but cancer ended up taking his life in 2011. Massey was one of those drivers that Slocum mentored. So to honor Slocum's memory, while Massey is going to be on the strip above, at the top of the windshield, over the door, it's not going to be Massey's name. It's going to be Bo Slocum's name. Very, very cool move. Cannot applaud Mason Massey enough for doing that. Hopefully that car does very, very well. Then we got this weird situation where Friday, MBM Motorsports Carl Long's team, released a statement saying that they had withdrawn from the racing action in Atlanta this weekend, and they're stepping back and regrouping. They are going to compete for the remainder of the year, but they're going to do this in something of what they call a hybrid, or what I'm calling a hybrid manner. It seems a lot more hybrid than what they have been doing, because they have concentrated, for the most part, on the Xfinity Series. Every once in a while, they'll throw a Cup Series right out there. The statement this time around noted that this is going to be the first Xfinity Series race since the 2015 season in which they have not entered a car. They decided to back out due to two factors. Number one, they're not going to get any practice time. Number two, they were not going to be able to, actually three factors, I should say. Number one, no practice time at the track. Number two, they didn't have access to a simulator to even try and get any practice for the driver. And that meant that, third, they were going to have to unload fast enough to qualify, and that was something they couldn't guarantee. The other thing they couldn't guarantee, again, it's the Southeast in July. Effectively, there's a chance of showers each and every day. If you've lived down here or spent any time in the southeastern part of the country, it's hot and it's humid pretty much from June until mid to late September. And there is always a chance of a shower or thunderstorm. Pop up, just happens. It might be a 10% chance of rain all day, but as you get into the afternoon with the heat of the day and the humidity going on, it fires something up, and all of a sudden you get this local shower or thunderstorm. And it cools things off for about 15 minutes, and then after the 15 minutes are gone, the sun comes back out, and it bakes it, and it looks like the roads are cooking, because all of the cool rain that cooled off all of the asphalt or concrete now all of a sudden is steaming. So because they couldn't even guarantee that qualifying was going to happen, and they didn't have the owner points to get in, they decided to withdraw because there was no guarantees. Then they decided to switch to good news. It was a bad news, good news kind of a press release where they said that while they are going to sit out this weekend, they're now going to be able to take the time, pick and choose which races they're going to compete in through the rest of 2023, and state it's going to be a mix. Some will be Xfinity Series, some will be Cup Series races. They did state the personnel limits will keep them only to racing one or the other. So even though most of the time, pretty much almost every weekend, I think, there might be one exception, from here on to the end of the year, Xfinity and Cup are racing at the same tracks when they're racing on the same weekend. But they say personnel limits will keep them to only going Xfinity Series racing or Cup Series racing. But they'll figure out their schedule, and they'll figure out which drivers they're going to use. They've already used several drivers, including the first to qualify for them on speed this year, which was Timmy Hill. He did it twice. He turned the trick at Auto Club in Dover. But they've also used Cesar Baccarella. They've used Mason Maggio. They've used Dexter Stacy. Just throwing it out there. We got a guy who'd be willing to take a turn in the car there, MBM. His name is Matt Nicholson. Just letting you know. Truck Series news out there, where road course racing usually brings out some names, well, you've really not heard before. That is the case for Roper Racing in the 04 Chevrolet Silverado. Some of you might have heard the name Landon Lewis. He's going to be in the truck for the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course later today as we air live. Bruce Cook, who is Lewis's crew chief in the ARCA West Series this year, is set to call the shots for this outing as well. He drives for McGowan Racing in ARCA competition. He's got 2 wins in ARCA West, 1 win in ARCA East, and a top 10 in his only ARCA Menard Series race, which was run earlier this year at Dover. Watch out for this kid. He's a 17-year-old kid. He's got a pretty good mentor. You might have heard his name before. He's a NASCAR Hall of Famer, multi-time Truck Series champion. Ron Hornaday Jr., ring a bell? That's the guy that's mentoring young Landon Lewis. Good luck. Knock it out, man. Hopefully things will go well. Another new name for the Truck Series today is a name that should be familiar to you if you know anything about racing at all. Andretti. IndyCar driver Marco Andretti. Yeah, he's an IndyCar driver by trade, but he's a driver who's expanding out his horizons. He ran and won the Superstar Racing Experience last year. That's right, he's the defending SRX Series champion. Now he's going to get another shot at NASCAR. He's climbing into the Spire Motorsports number 7 Chevrolet Silverado later on today. Sponsorship from Group 1001, Group 1001. That's a subsidiary of a longtime Andretti Autosport sponsor. Gainbridge Insurance. This marks Marco's second NASCAR start, first in the Truck Series. Last year, he started at the Roval race in the Xfinity Series. He finished 36th. I don't think that was the best indication of what Marco can do. This is a course, obviously, he's never seen before. I don't think he's ever even raced at Charlotte before, much less the Roval. And he's stepping into the Xfinity Series, which had, at that point in time, a few, if I remember right, 1 or 2 Moonlighters in it as well. I might be wrong on that. It was a playoff race, so I might be wrong there. But either way, he jumped in with both feet. Again, 36th, and there were some things that kind of kept him from being able to do much better than that as well. So I'm not trying to denigrate what Marco Andretti might have been able to do. What I do know is this. He proved himself to be pretty good in a truck yesterday during qualifying as we air live. Yeah, he qualified that thing inside the top 10. Good luck to Marco. The news of his start came, by the way, at a time that Spire announced a multi-year sponsorship deal with Gainbridge for their Cup Series teams, the 7 of Corey LaJoie and the 77 of Ty Dillon. They're going to rotate the brand between the two Cup cars for the remainder of the 2023 season. And when this news came out earlier on in the week, it led our absent co-host, Matt Nicholson, to do a little bit of surmising. Because you think about this. Andretti obviously is very, very well entrenched in the IndyCar series, but they're expanding out into other series. Avalanche Andretti in Formula E. They're trying to get the Formula One team under Andretti Global. That's the new company. And we're going to get into a little bit more of that when we get into IndyCar and Formula One news here in a minute. But when you look at what they're trying to do, how much of a stretch is it really for them to begin to look at, if not buying the team, certainly becoming a financial and racing partner with Aspire Motorsports, and to expand out Andretti Global into NASCAR? It's not really that big of a stretch. Their guy, Marco Andretti, is already racing in NASCAR and said that he likes the idea of getting in more NASCAR races. Seems to be the obvious thing. Why wouldn't they want to go NASCAR racing even that much more? Maybe on a full-time basis. And go in with a team like Spire that already has the infrastructure set. In other words, they don't have to build the entire organization themselves. All they got to do is come in and take effectively a turnkey organization. And again, I'm not saying Spire's going to get out. I'm not saying they won't either. Things happen. But Spire Motorsports, they haven't blown things up here lately. Really, ever since they came in here a few years ago as that single car operation with the 77, where they just kept running drivers through it constantly. And that was the one thing that Matt and I, even when they came about, we were like, is that really the best thing that you could possibly do? Well, then they finally settled on going to a second car, the 7 car. They put Corey LaJoie in it. They've seen some success in it. And what did they finally do? They put Ty Dillon full-time in the 77. At least it settled things down, if they haven't really done much in the 77 car, which I think is more the driver than anything else. I've never been sold on Ty Dillon. Sorry if you're a fan. But Spire hasn't really seemed to be able to get things running the way that they would really like to get things running. They would like to be much more competitive in the grand scheme of things with both cars, not just Corey LaJoie. To be able to bring in a company that knows racing, even if it's not necessarily NASCAR related, they know racing. And the sponsorship is coming about. Why wouldn't you come in and say, do a 50-50 split, Andretti Spire Motorsports, and use their capabilities, use their resources to be able to better your operation? Matt might be onto something here. There seems to be a lot of connections here. Are they tenuous? Yes, they are. No doubt about it. But where there's smoke, there's fire, as they say. Could this be a smokescreen? Yeah, but I think Matt might be onto something. There may be something going on in the background that might end up end up with Andretti coming to NASCAR. And I think it'd be fantastic if it happened. Before we take a break, let's go ahead and finish off what's going on here in Craftsman Truck Series news. Rayom Brothers Racing decided they're also going to go with somebody outside of the regular Craftsman Truck Series orbit. They're going to turn to an ARCA Menard Series veteran and put him in the number 34 Ford F-150. Sponsorship from Lickety Loos. The driver's Caleb Costner, no relation to Kevin that I know of. Costner is now a 30-year-old driver. This will mark his Truck Series debut. He's got only 6 ARCA starts to his credit, split amongst all 3 divisions, no top 10s, driving mostly for his own operation. So we'll have to see how Caleb can do. Meanwhile, AM Racing is happy to welcome back Austin Wayne Self. Austin Wayne Self has not raced in the Craftsman Truck Series after running a majority of the races just last year. One of those races was Mid-Ohio. He claimed 16th last year. He hopes to better that finish this year. Self has not been idle. He's been running for AM Racing. They're dirt modified specifically this year. In fact, he's got 7 wins, including the one that he picked up last weekend at Fairground Speedway in Boone, North Carolina. So congratulations to Austin Wayne Smith and to AM Racing. I know they're happy to have Austin Wayne Self back behind the wheel of their number 22. And Austin probably pretty happy to be in the truck as well. But again, this is a one-off. How many more races he might or might not do throughout the rest of the year? Could not even begin to surmise. What does NASCAR think about the Chicago deal? We'll talk about it when we come back because we got some basic NASCAR news, then some SRX, Indycar, Formula One, you know.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back. for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Yeah, let's do this thing. I'm Steve West, sitting solo this time around. Next week, I'll be rejoined by producer John and Matt, who are both on location. John doing a very nice job from the house, putting this thing up on CRN Live on YouTube. Thank you very much for doing that. Don't forget about all the social media pages. Matt's mostly in charge of those. Twitter, Facebook, and all those. No, we have not done Thread, whatever the Facebook competitor for Twitter's supposed to be. We're talking about it. We might have a meeting at some point in time later on this week, or maybe next weekend after the show, and talk about it a little bit more. I'm just not so certain yet that I'm sold on the idea of another social media. But we also have our very own website, and you can check that out too, crnradio.us. Thank you very much for doing so. And again, when it comes to CRN Live on YouTube, if you are checking that out or haven't checked it out, please go check it out. Subscribe to it. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And if you already have subscribed, let a friend know. We appreciate it. NASCAR officials overall seem pretty happy with the weekend, the first ever NASCAR sanctioned street course races for Xfinity and Cup. Things were tempered a little bit by the news that a course worker got electrocuted while helping prepare for the race weekend. The Cook County, Illinois medical examiner identified the man as 53-year-old Dwayne Tabinski, the founder of an events company hired to help install and set up audio equipment. First responders did initial treatment at the scene. He was then transported to Northwestern Medical Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on Friday morning a week ago. That's according to a report on Chicago's WLS-TV. NASCAR and Chicago race promoters acknowledged the tragedy very early, then released a statement that said in part, quote, "We are coordinating with local authorities on this tragic incident. We share our condolences to the family and friends of our loved ones." And of course, we do that here at CRN as well. And this is one of those things. This could happen at Talladega. This could happen at Daytona. This could happen at the... could have happened at the L.A. Coliseum. I know I like to call it the Mausoleum. Could have happened at any race course. This isn't endemic to just Chicago. But that being said, there were a lot of last-minute preparations that were being done in Chicago. And because of the fact that there was some haste involved, that may have led to some of the situation that they dealt with. We know that Kevin Harvick is set to retire at the end of this year. He is set to stay involved in the Cup Series. We've talked about it. He's joining Fox in 2024. He's going to join Mike Joy and Clint Boyer in the booth, helping the call of the Cup Series races. What we do know this, his son and his daughter are also getting into racing. His son, Keelan, older, now 11, think about that, is quite accomplished and seems to be following in his father's footsteps. So a lot of people kind of think he will end up doing the exact same thing, climb the ladder, move into the same series that his father won the title back in 2014. Hold your horses. That may or may not ever happen, because Luke Smith has penned an article for The Athletic. Says the 11-year-old may have his eyes set on Formula One. Noting Keelan even had the chance to walk around the roads on Monaco that make up the race course, posted a picture of himself on the roadway, included the phrase, "maybe one day." Keelan recently got the chance to compete in karting in Italy. It helped him get a kind of a feel for what the competition there is from so many other drivers who have had the same dream of getting into Formula One. But Smith notes in the article that the Harvicks are willing to spend time there to see if Keelan can make it work. Got to remember, there are only two U.S.-born drivers who have ever won a title in Formula One. That's Phil Hill in 1961. Mario Andretti won the Formula One title in 1978. Thing about it is Mario Andretti didn't actually win a race in the 1978 year. He was just so ridiculously consistent over the course of the season that he claimed the title. The last American-born driver to claim a race win in Formula One, you got to go back to 1973. This is an uphill battle. We're going to get back to it in a minute because we've talked about this. There are numerous teams in the Cup Series, and there are 36 to 38 entries on any given weekend. It varies, but yeah. You got a lot more teams, you got a lot more cars that are available to you in NASCAR's Cup Series, Xfinity, and even the Truck Series. There's even more entries available to him in Indycar. Instead, you're trying to funnel everybody into one massive bottleneck, and that's a problem that they're all having right now. Every single Formula One operation has a bottleneck situation that they're dealing with right now, to where if you are trying to get this young up-and-comer, look at a Mick Schumacher, for example, there's no seat for him. He's now the primary reserve driver at Mercedes, but there's no seat at Mercedes for him. There's Daniel Ricciardo, who's won races in the Formula One level before. There's no seat for him. They're all taken. He's the primary reserve driver for Red Bull. Think about that for a couple of seconds. It is extremely hard to break into Formula One. Give it a shot by all means, Keelan, but keep your options open. Superstar Racing Experience set to get going this week. Got another single race slot that's been filled. Austin Dillon has signed up for one SRX event. He's going to be at the Eldora Speedway race August the 10th. It's going to mark the debut for Dillon in the All-Star Series. Full details of the car have not been revealed. I'll get back to that in a second. Another one-off race going to mark the return of Ernie Francis Jr. You might remember him last year. He and Tony Stewart got together at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway race, and during one of the breaks, Tony Stewart got out of the car, and he even grabbed Ernie Francis Jr. by the collar, effectively. He grabbed his race suit, pulled him in, and kind of read him the riot act. But he's back. He'll be part of the series, the lineup, when the series wraps up this 2023 season at Lucas Oil Raceway Park on August the 17th. Again, no details on his car information at this time. You got Kenny Wallace. We've talked about him. He was, keyword, slated to run only one race in this coming SRX season. You can scratch that and now make it 2. He's added Thunder Road in Vermont to his schedule. That marks 12 all-star drivers now in all 6 events. Really, all that's left now is to reveal who's in what number and who's going to be the local drivers at each of these particular races, because that will change as well. But there's still other news to talk about because more sponsors continue to join the Superstar Racing Experience as well. The latest is Purdue University. School noted for its engineering graduates. They're called the Boilermakers as well, and have a big train as their major look as far as their logo is concerned. They're going to sponsor not just one, but 2 drivers. They're based out of the Indianapolis area, so they're going to get behind IndyCar veterans, Elio Castroneves and Tony Kanaan. Both of those drivers will sport Purdue University sponsorship in all 6 races. Coming up later this year, I had the chance to see the cars, and I'd love to get pictures, but again, I didn't want to overload John, who again is doing this at home, so he's got a lot of things kind of up in the air, so I didn't overload him with a whole bunch of pictures. Maybe at some point in time, we'll go back to that, and hopefully pictures will return next week. National Hot Rod Association, not a whole lot going there. A couple of bits of news, though. The beginning of the Northwestern Swing, unfortunately, reveals another finale race for the NHRA. This will be the final time that they're going to race at Bandimere Speedway as we know it in the Mile High Nationals. It's where they're going to race next weekend, not this weekend. The intent is to rebuild the facility not too far away, but as Denver and its suburbs have expanded out, the land became just too valuable, so they sold it to developers for other uses. As to the exact new location or when this new version of Bandimere Speedway might open up, that hasn't been revealed yet. Here's the thing, and I've seen memes on this. You know, people get upset about street racing. So what do? They open up a racing facility somewhere, and they're like, oh, yeah, cool. And people start moving into the area. And then they complain about the noise from the racing facility that had been built to keep people from racing on the streets. So they shut down the racing facility, and what do? They go back to street course racing. Bandimere Speedway. 2021 Pro Stock Car Champion Alan Johnson set to get a chance to claim a win in another division in the NHRA competition, the newest one, Factory X. This is a little bit different from the Factory Stock Showdown. Factory X takes older cars, not just the brand new ones, but takes older cars that are street/drag race ready, and you can compete in those. Alan Johnson's been named the driver of Jeff Turk's Dodge Challenger. He has nicknamed the car the Blackbird X. This continues Johnson's long partnership, by the way, with Mopar Products. Turk had been the driver and the car owner. He suffered, however, severe injuries in a test crash back in April in Kentucky, and in the aftermath has been diagnosed with a severe brain hemorrhage. It required immediate surgery, which he's still recovering from both the accident and the surgery. So he's been ordered not to race, at least in the interim. He turned to Johnson. Johnson will take the wheel at least until Turk can return, or at least through the end of the year. And then we'll see what happens as we get ready to head into 2024. We haven't really kept up with Factory X this year as much as we kept up with things like the Factory Stock Showdown. Might do a review on that a little bit later on in the year. Turning our attention to the IndyCar series, we noted during the race recap, Simon Pagenaud had suffered a wreck during practice, ended up being pulled from the race, got replaced by Connor Daly. Got some more details on this that show, as noted, during practice, Pagenaud was going near full speed as he came up upon turn 4. Now, this got caught on a camera. His car literally flew off of the course, off of turn 4, landed, and started to do a rollover in a gravel trap. It rolled over 7 times and ended up on its side. Pagenaud got pulled out of the car. He was taken to the track's care center. Could not return in time for qualifying. It necessitated the driver change. He got reevaluated on Sunday morning, but series officials, who did not go into detail, would not clear him to race. We found out later, concussion protocol. Meyer Shank Racing owner Mike Shank said, quote, "We have to thank Connor for stepping into this. He has been super great through all the chaos." Simon Pagenaud says he wants to return quickly. We wish him nothing but the best. Dale Coyne Racing and second-year driver David Malukas set to split up after the season's over. Malukas is driving the team's number 18. He had signed a 2-year deal before the 2022 season. The team has not experienced the success they were hoping for, despite the fact that Malukas claimed a top 10 last weekend at Mid-Ohio. Reports do have other teams, including Andretti Autosports, sniffing around and talking about bringing Malukas in to drive for them. So the talent's there. Other teams recognize it. Dale Coyne might not be able to back it up, and Malukas is looking for something that might be a little bit more competitive. The 21-year-old talked to Racer.com this week, said, quote, "We're talking to other teams, haven't officially signed anything with anybody else, but things do look promising. And I do know for my future, I will not be returning to Dale Coyne. We're still in early to mid talks with these teams, but I hope to have answers in another month or so." We'll get back to that because there's something else to talk about when it comes to Andretti. I already talked about the fact that maybe they might be thinking about getting into NASCAR, maybe in a partnership with Spire Motorsports. It seems to be the link that Gainbridge Insurance, which is an Andretti Autosport sponsor, and now sponsoring Spire, it might lead to that, but there's more. We'll get back to it in a moment. Meantime, could a rolling roadblock move by AJ Foyt Racing's Benjamin Peterson cause a rule change in IndyCar? Seems last weekend at Mid-Ohio, the rookie was trying to stay on the lead lap when leaders Alex Palou and Scott McLaughlin began to attempt to pass him. Palou got, well, we'll just say frustrated. He got a little steamed when it was revealed that Peterson had been using his push-to-pass allocation. You're given about 200 seconds every single race in push-to-pass. He was using 20 to 30 seconds a lap in the attempt to stay on the lead lap. Obviously, all the drivers who are about to get lapped want to stay on the lead lap. Because at that point in time, if you happen to get a random caution, you can catch back up to the tail end of the field and not have to worry about it. Here's the thing. IndyCar rules, when they're shown the blue flags, don't force a driver to yield. It's just kind of suggestion. The blue flags in IndyCar are similar to the blue and orange flag on the ovals in NASCAR, the ones that you're much more familiar with, although at road courses, NASCAR do use blue-only flags. It tells the driver that a faster car is catching you and suggests you move over. Either way, this doesn't make Palou happy. You said after, "I know the rules, I'd like them to change, but it's not going to change." In other words, I think he would like them basically to say, "We show you a blue flag, you slow down, you get out of the way." The other driver who was caught up in this was Scott McLaughlin. He went over and talked to Peterson after the race and said afterward, quote, "I just said that he's not going to make any friends if he holds people up. He's not in our race. I get it. He's in a race of his own. It's give or take in this series. If I'm a lap down and he's behind me, who knows what I'm going to end up doing." Scott Dixon, the 6-time IndyCar champion, suggested there's a possible rule change in this situation. IndyCar could disable the push to pass on all the cars that are at least one lap down. Okay, yeah, technically they could, but here's the thing. At that time, he wasn't a lap down. Will Power said that the blue flag needs to have more teeth to it, meaning that the slower driver now must yield to the faster one, saying that he knew that drivers were hoping for a caution so they could get back around to the back end of the field, but said, quote, "It's not like we have yellows constantly. You're going to get your lap back if that caution happens." And he's right about that. We'll have to see if any rule changes come about. Again, Alex Palou doesn't think that there will be. And now let's get back to this Andretti Autosport situation here. Talking about maybe being interested in bringing on David Malukas, you wonder how. Because don't they have all this situation all taken care of? Yes and no. Andretti Autosport said now they're going to change how they do business in IndyCar with one of their 4 entries. Traditionally, the 29 car has been driven by a driver who brings a check along with them. That includes drivers like Zach Veach, James Hinchcliffe, and this year's pilot of the 29, Devlin DeFrancesco. But as Andretti Global begins to take over all racing operations that Andretti's involved in after being formed in 2022, they've got a new way of doing business, and they're going to make the 29 car like the other 3 entries. They're going to go with the best driver instead of the one who brings a check. Where have we heard that before? Oh, that's right. Stewart-Haas Racing. Remember when they announced after the fact of putting Josh Berry into the 4 car a couple of weeks ago, taking over for Kevin Harvick? Tony Stewart basically went on something of a rampage saying, I want the best drivers available. I'm not looking for the best driver who brings a check. I want the best driver, period. This is what Andretti Autosport's going for as well. I think it's fantastic. Andretti Global has gotten also major backing from Guggenheim Securities, and here's those names again, Gainbridge and Group 1001. That will help them sponsor the cars for those top-level drivers. Likely means the end, by the way, for Devlin DeFrancesco in the 29 car after a couple of years being in there and bringing a check along with him. But again, I applaud this. We've talked about this I don't know how many times, and I know that there are plenty of you that are listening or watching us on CRN Live on YouTube who are thinking the exact same thing. Can we please get back to the talent and not dealing with the guys and girls who just bring checks?
Superior Italian and pub fare for
Go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Back into the show. I'm Steve West, Matt Nicholson, producer John Myers on location. John doing a very nice job of putting up CRN Live on YouTube from a remote area. We appreciate all of his efforts, and best of luck to Matt, who is dealing with a personal situation this weekend. One more note here in IndyCar, and it does actually allow us to kind of transition to Formula One here, because Alex Palou is kind of serving two masters. He's driving for one team in IndyCar, Chip Ganassi, but we think that this is his last year there, and next year probably going to switch over to Arrow McLaren. And he's actually already tested, and he's one of the reserve drivers for Arrow McLaren in Formula One. And he may still have his eyes set on it, but his boss, Zach Brown at McLaren, wants him to concentrate on his IndyCar exploits. Brown said that watching Palou this season has been, quote, very impressive, unquote, noted by his 110-point lead in the championship run so far. But he has been busy, again, not only gunning for the IndyCar title, he's gotten the chance to test a McLaren Formula One car. He was in FP1 on the weekend of the Hungarian Grand Prix a few weeks ago, but Brown says that's it. We're not doing any more. Quote, Alex has been very impressive in IndyCar. The competition there is fierce, so for him to win as many races as he has in the fashion in which he's done, it's very impressive. He's our reserve driver. He will be joining us at the end of the IndyCar year for the remaining Formula One races, so he's definitely a strong talent. And again, keep in mind that Palou is expected to switch from his current ride to Arrow McLaren in IndyCar for 2024. As to whether or not he gets to actually move into Formula One at some point in time, he may desire to do that, but we just talked about it a moment ago. There's not a whole lot of seats available. As for McLaren, as we switch to Formula One, they're celebrating their 60th year as part of their year-long celebrations. For this weekend at Britain, their home race, they're breaking out a special paint scheme. They're going to throw back to a look that they actually ran from 2006 to 2014. They got a chrome look. Now, much more of the car was actually chrome between 2006 and 2014. This case, they've taken a lot of chrome and they're mixing in their signature papaya orange on the side pods and the rear wing. The design, however, is not only a throwback to a nod to one of their major sponsors, Google, which of course has Google Chrome, if you choose to use it. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. That's a decision you have to make. I don't. Williams won't be upstaged. They noted that this is going to be their 800th start this weekend in Britain. They're sporting a new one-off look for the weekend. Well, actually, here's the thing. This was supposed to be their 800th start. But with the cancellation of the Emilia-Romagna because of historic flooding, the 800th start actually will happen in Hungary, but Williams is going to go ahead. They're going to run a special look for both Britain and for Hungary. The main difference between their regular 2023 paint scheme and the British Grand Prix look is that, well, the entire engine cover, back half of the car, it's effectively going to be the Union Jack, the British flag, with a little line inside the flag that'll feature the original team logo that states Frank Williams Cars established 1977, marking the first year of their very first Formula One race. This particular look is going to be for Britain only. There'll be another look for Hungary, which, again, I hope to have a picture of next week when we actually get it. Another new look is coming for the British-based Aston Martin. They've got sponsorship from Aramco already, but one of their sub-brands, Aramco, is Valvoline, a longtime partner in NASCAR, as you probably know. But they've been missing from Formula One since the Marussia team folded about not quite a decade ago now. Well, Valvoline is now signed on as the official lubricants partner for Aston Martin, so a new paint scheme, I should say really more a slightly altered paint scheme, is coming into effect to note the new partnership. They've added some black to the front wing. They're going to put the Valvoline logo, at the very least, that red and blue V, if not the name of the product as well, on the side and the top of the front wing, along with the bottom of the side pod right behind the front wheel. It'll also be on the engine cowl. Expect the team to return to their normal look, with Valvoline added a little bit more subtly for the next race. Again, Hungary. Let's see, where else are we going to go here? How about this? Ferrari. It hasn't been a banner year for Ferrari. Formula One's oldest team, we've talked about it. They have run every single race that Formula One has ever been in, Ferrari. But even though Charles Leclerc claimed second place last weekend, this did, for them, mark their landmark 800th podium finish in the series. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what podium finish means, it means you either finished first, second, or third. Other milestone marks, Red Bull claimed their 10th consecutive win. Yeah, don't we know? Puts them one shy of the Formula One all-time mark, 11 straight wins. That was last done by McLaren way back in 1988. Oof. Max Verstappen came into the race having led 224 consecutive laps. While he could have challenged for the all-time consecutive laps record, well, it ended. The streak ended 24 laps into the race last weekend, so it ends at 248 straight. Still impressive, and still third on Formula One's all-time list behind Ayrton Senna and Alberto Ascari. His win, though, does mark career win number 42, puts him all by himself, one ahead of Ayrton Senna on the all-time Formula One's wins list. Keep in mind, Lewis Hamilton's north of 100. It's got a ways to go. Let's real quick take a look here. I'm going to refresh this here because Formula One is in Q2, getting ready for this weekend's British Grand Prix. And I kind of want to throw out there who has been eliminated. Obviously, there are 5 drivers that get eliminated in round 1, Q1. Those drivers are Kevin Magnussen, Nick DeVries, Zhou Guanyu, Yuki Tsunoda. And get this, Red Bull Racing Sergio Perez missed out on advancing out of Q1. Who's leading? Strangely enough, a McLaren. Oscar Piastri right now leading in Q2. Max Verstappen, no surprise there. Fernando Alonso, Alexander Albon, Charles Leclerc, your fast 5 right now. So we'll keep an eye on that. It's only about less than 5 minutes to go. As we've got, give or take 10 minutes in the show, we'll at least be able to tell you the end of Q2. Now, Andretti Autosport. I know, they're kind of pervasive in this week, aren't they? Talked about them a little bit when it came to maybe going into NASCAR. We certainly talked about them when it came to what's going on in Indycar. They also, of course, are well known to be highly, highly interested in getting into Formula One. And we know that the letter deadline is over. Has been now really since, about a month now. As to when we might hear something about those letters of interest set into the FIA and who might and might not make the cut, FIA and Formula One officials are being really, really quiet. But this is something that Andretti Cadillac contingent seems to think, we can't do that. We're not going to stay quiet. And they haven't been. They've been very, very vocal. And it has upset some of the existing teams in Formula One, but at this point in time, it doesn't really seem to have upset either the FIA or Formula One. So Andretti Cadillac has come out and said that they think they're going to have some word as to their situation when it comes to that letter this coming week. They've targeted July 15th to be exact. Now, Cadillac wants to go racing so bad that the executive director of General Motors Motorsports posted on social media, quote, "We're trying to race in the 2025 season. So we've been going hardcore with Andretti to design the 25 car. Remember, Formula One's got a new engine package coming that takes effect in 2026. All the other teams have stated, we'll go racing in 2026 with the new engine package. They want to go racing the year before? Okay. Here's another thing that is actually in their favor. Officials with Liberty Media, again, these are the commercial rights holders for Formula One, and there are reports that there are people inside the FIA who are all saying the basically same thing. If General Motors is interested, we can't ignore them. I don't know whether that's a hint or not. We'll find out. Toto Wolff from Mercedes, on the other hand, is sitting there talking about, hey, it's 10 cars or 10 teams right now with 20 cars. We're all tripping over ourselves now. We add an 11th or even a 12th team. It's going to be a safety hazard. Dude, get over yourself. Get over yourself. If you find yourself tripping over other teams and yourselves, that's on you. Fix your camp. Fix your own tent. Fix your campsite. Fix your house. Clean it up. That's on you. It just baffles me that they are so unwilling to expand out. They want to make the United States such a market that they are not just here, but actually on the motorsports map, which we have said numerous occasions now. It's owned by NASCAR. If you look at the people that are going to the races, if you look at the television and the radio ratings, NASCAR owns the motorsports market here in the United States of America. Everybody else is fighting for second. And Formula One's doing a nice job. The main problem with Formula One, they only have one American-born driver. He's running for Williams. It's not like he's highly competitive for a major, high, speedy seat. We have got Haas F1 out there, but while they have made some noise, they haven't been uber competitive. Andretti Autosport says, we'll be the American-based team. We promise to bring you at least one American-born driver. Something to root for. Why is everybody else in Formula One so adamantly opposed to doing this? Boggles my mind. Provisional 2024 Formula One calendar has been unveiled. 24 races. As to whether they get all 24 in, that's another story. Remember, they wanted to do 23 this year. They only going to get in 21 because they had to cancel China before the season even began, and we flooded out Emilia-Romagna, remember? So let's go down this list. It'll begin on March 2nd next year, the season opener in Bahrain. The next week to Saudi Arabia. They'll get a week off and go down under to Australia for a March 24th race. Then they'll get another week off, get into Japan. That moves them up on the schedule. And then China after another week off. Then they're going to go from China to the United States for the first time. Miami, that'll kick off May, surrounded by a week off before and after. Then they go to Italy for Emilia-Romagna, and then back-to-back weeks, Italy to Monaco. They'll get another week off, come back to North America for Canada before another week off, and go to Spain. Spain will lead off 3 in a row. Spain, Austria, Britain, first back-to-back-to-back race weekends for F1 next year. Then a week off before they wrap up before the annual August break. Call it the August break. Back-to-back weekends in Hungary and Belgium. The last full weekend in August gets them back to racing in the Netherlands, back-to-back with them in Italy, then a week off before back-to-back races in Azerbaijan and Singapore. There's some traveling there. Then they get almost another entire month off before back-to-back-to-back race weekends, where they come back to North America. They're going to race at COTA October the 20th of next year, Mexico the next weekend, and then Brazil the weekend after that before returning to the U.S. for the Las Vegas race on November the 23rd. We're still not done, and we're in late November. Got 2 more races to go. Qatar and Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi will be the season finale. It'll take place December the 8th. Yeah, the season goes from March 2nd to December 8th, 2024. Some other things to note. Las Vegas is going to be a Saturday night race for most of the world, including here in the United States. Yeah, they've added 2 more. The first 2 races of the year, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, to accommodate Ramadan, will be run on Saturdays, as will, again, Las Vegas. And as we noted, Japan moves up on the schedule. It's not the only one moved around. Formula One's kind of attempting to regionalize the schedule just a little bit more. They're running Australia, Japan, and China in order. They did miss this. They sent the series to Miami for a standalone event after China before going to Europe for 2 races and then coming back to North America to run Canada, then back to Europe for Spain. The thing about it is, this is a schedule that is not provisional. This has already been approved, so it's now written in stone as it has been approved by the World Motorsport Council. But I still can't guarantee you that this is going to be the final schedule. Why? Think about it. The last time China actually ran a Formula One race was 2019. That was, well, it's all been due to stupid COVID, which, politically incorrect, I know, started in China. Sorry, boys and girls, but it did. They thought it might return this year, but again, just before the season began, they scratched it. Suitable replacement couldn't be found, knocking the season down from the planned 23 to 22. So here you go. Whether or not we race in China next year, I don't know. Do they have a backup plan? Again, I don't know. As for another one of those races, the Austrian Grand Prix specifically, they're going to be around for a little while longer, at least through 2030, according to the extension of the Formula One deal. The Red Bull Ring brought Formula One back to Austria in 2013. Back in March, they signed an extension through 2027, but after racing there last year, they further extended the deal through 2030. And you might remember the beginning of the 2022 British Grand Prix was marred by a bunch of anti-oil idiots who stormed the track on the opening lap of the race. Luckily for them, they didn't get run over from the racers going full speed because a red flag got shown almost immediately after the start because of a crash, a pretty serious one, by Zhou Guanyu before the racers even got to the point where the fools had trespassed out onto the track. This group calls themselves Just Stop Oil. Many of them got arrested. Some of the charges are still yet to be heard out in court. This is the same group that has stopped action at the Wimbledon tennis tournament and some British cricket games, not exactly endearing themselves to the sporting public. The drivers are worried that they could be planning a repeat protest this weekend. Organizers of the race said that they have stepped up the security measures just in case. I say let them get run over and killed. I'm sorry. I've got very little patience for stuff like this. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Let them get run over. I bet you they stop doing it. One more note here. If you've been waiting somewhat impatiently for the Apple Plus Brad Pitt movie about Formula One, well, there's still a good way to go before it'll be seen entirely because filming has just begun. But the movie, again, stars Brad Pitt, directed by Top Gun Maverick shot caller Joseph Kosinski, has a working title. It's called Apex. We also know this. Brad Pitt's character is going to be named Sonny Hayes. There's actually a placard above an open garage for the character who will, according to the picture, drive for a team that uses Mercedes engines. In fact, if you pay close attention to the ESPN coverage, if you're in the United States, of the British Grand Prix, you might actually see some signs of the filming of the movie being done as a backdrop. Kosinski wants to keep things as real as possible, so he's foregoing CGI as much as he can. Said, quote, "It's almost funny to me to see people who are so enamored with real photography. Younger people haven't seen a lot of it. They're so used to CGI being used as a tool of big movies when you shoot something for real. It's just innovative." It's exactly the approach for this movie. To shoot as the real races and real cars and capture it. It's going to be a huge challenge, but an exciting one. The movie's set to feature the fictional APX GP team. As noted, the film has the working title Apex. Could be one way to pronounce the APX part of the fictional team's name. And of course, Apex is how a driver should hit a corner. The car bodies are authentic Formula One bodies, but put on Formula with 2 chassis. Highly unlikely the engines are going to be full power Formula One because the actors are going to be doing some of the driving well. But I have seen a picture of the car. I'll try and show it to you next week. It's a pretty good-looking black and gold painted racer. Pay attention to the coverage, if you will. Speaking of which, enjoy the racing this weekend. Next weekend, Matt, John should be joining me back in studio. Enjoy the weekend. Have a safe and wonderful one. We'll talk to you again next weekend right here on the Championship Racing Network.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.